I'm an addict named Kathy. I can say one thing, I've never been laid this much at a convention before in my recovery. I really appreciate it. Yeah, I know. This has really been a very, very special experience for me. I've really tried to cut back on sharing and traveling. I've been wanting to spend more time home with my family and my children. And I don't like to say no whenever Narcotics Anonymous calls, because Narcotics Anonymous has given me a life. I've heard many people say that Narcotics Anonymous gives us back life, but I really can't relate to having much of a life before Narcotics Anonymous. If this truly is what life is all about, then I really didn't have much of a life before Narcotics Anonymous. And I am truly and deeply appreciative of what was been given to me. And lately I've been really struggling with keeping commitments and coming and traveling and stuff. And it's really special because I do believe that anytime I'm asked that I'm coming to give something and I'm coming to get something. And I believe that. And it's just been a really good because I've met some really wonderful people and I've made some new friends. And I appreciate my friends today. That I didn't have many friends for a lot of years, and I don't take friends lightly. And I appreciate them, and I show my appreciation for them in my life. I don't take them for granted. And at the same time, I really am grateful for an experience that I had this afternoon at lunch, because I got to share with another addict one-on-one that brought tears to both of our eyes, and it kind of made me know why I was here. And I'm just grateful for the experiences. I believe experiences are God's blessings to me. I believe I was meant to learn from them, and that somehow or another I missed the boat for a lot of years on them. And that since I've been here, I've become aware. And as a result, I learn. And I'm living in the moment, which was something I could never do before. Usually when I start off sharing, I share in a certain format and I introduce in a certain way. So I'm going to start by saying that while I'm sharing, if any moment that I'm sharing, if my spirit touches your spirit, if you feel the feelings that I'm expressing while I'm sharing, that I would ask you to please take that moment and thank the God of your understanding for truly blessing us with unconditional love and making recovery available to us all. Just take that minute and just say, thanks, God, because I know this message comes from God. I'm not confused about that. I believe that God led me to Narcotics Anonymous, and Narcotics Anonymous led me to God. Because I had no understanding of God before I came here. I had no understanding of loving and caring and comforting and nurturing. There weren't principles in my life before I came here. That there was a lot of condemning and a lot of judging. There was a lot of guilt and a lot of shame, and I didn't understand why. All I know is it was there, and it was there for a long, long time. That within me there was a hole, and the hole was very deep, and I could never seem to fill it. There was a dis-ease within me long, long before I came to the drugs. The drugs just seemed to taper it off for a little while, but the hole was always there. And I'm going to share a little bit about what happened when I got here, about what has happened to me as a result of that, not just like my experience, strength, and hope, but I want to share about who I was, what happened to me, and who I am today as a result of the steps and traditions in Narcotics Anonymous. A miracle has truly happened to me that sometimes I awe myself. Sometimes I see me doing things. Have you ever seen yourself in 3D? Sometimes I see me doing things and I'm just totally in awe that I do what I do. That I say nice, that I'm kind to people that I don't even know. That I give people breaks in cars. That I smile at strangers. It just amazes me. That is not me. It's not the nature of me. The nature of me has changed. A metamorphosis has occurred here. It's truly spiritual in nature, and it's a gift from God. I know that today. When I first came here, I came here in 1986, fresh out of the penitentiary, just finished a 4-year sentence for living to use and using to live. I was very creative. I did what I had to do, and a bunch of us did it together, and they made a federal case out of it. It wasn't a big deal. We live to use, we use to live by any means necessary. We do what we do, and they just made a big deal out of it. And so I went to the penitentiary like we do, because I came to terms with that. I started to understand that maybe 2-3 years into it. I started using, like narcotics in 76. By 78, it became very clear to me that this was a downhill battle. But I pretty much bought into that's the way it goes. I did not know anything about progression. I didn't know that I was dealing with something that was totally incurable. The Japanese interpreter asked me to please talk slowly and pause in between. I can speak, it's a shame, I can speak faster than the speed of sound. And it's going to take an act of God to slow me down here. So, God, please help me. I came here in 1988. Now I say by 78, we say you're not going to get clean until you hit your bottom. You got to hit your bottom in order to get clean. Well, hey, shit, I hit my bottom in 78. This disease gave me a shovel and said, dig deeper. And I dug for 10 years. I really, truly thought that I was digging my way out. You hear what I'm saying? I really wanted to way out. I did not want to be the way I was. I saw things getting progressively worse. I tried to regroup as best as I possibly could. I did not know I was digging myself deeper into a hole. My father used to tell me that it was just a matter of willpower. Right? He still believes that today. He thinks I've acquired it through you, though. But nevertheless, he believes it was about willpower. And he used to say, you just got to get a grip on yourself. If you just get a grip on yourself, because he did not know that it had a grip on me. He didn't know that. My mother used to say it was just a phase I was going through. This was like, we're talking 20 years active addiction, and it's a phase you're going through. Would you have any idea when this is going to phase out? Because I don't see it happening here, Can you give me a little light at the end of the tunnel? Because there's nothing happening. By the time I got here in 88, I had finished a 4-year bit in the penitentiary. I had a year clean. And I remember coming and getting a key tag and people saying, how'd you do it? And I was thinking, what do you mean, how'd I do it? I was locked up. Isn't that how everybody does it? I really didn't understand the concept that an addict could be free in the world, have the choice to use or not to use, and choose not to use. They weren't really addicts then. They were those recreational social user people because they couldn't be like I was and choose not to use. So I really couldn't understand it. And what happened was, because I was, it was like, I used to call it judicial intervention, but because I didn't understand about divine intervention, now I know about divine intervention. And what happened was I got a little misinformation while I was incarcerated. They were suggesting rehabilitation. And what the real problem was that you can't rehabilitate someone who has not yet been habilitated. Like you're putting the cart before the horse. And I was told that really it was a problem that I had a problem because I used illegal drugs and because I never had a job in my life. I could relate really well to the speaker last night because my job was to live to use and use to live. That was a rough job. That was a 24/7 job, no benefits, no vacation, no sick days, nothing. You know what I mean? You had to work every day 24/7. I hated Sunday something fierce. And I had been down the whole realm of detoxes and rehabs and methadone programs, and I wasn't allowed in Pittsburgh on a methadone program. I wasn't allowed on the street that the methadone program was on. I was like bad company wherever I went. I was an undesirable for a methadone program. And what happened is in 1988 when I came here, I heard you say some things that really confused me. And it says in our readings that we can't afford to be intolerant or indifferent to spiritual principles. 3 of these, it says, are totally indispensable. Honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness, that we can't afford to not practice those 3 principles. Well, I came in here and the first one was right out the gate. the honesty one caught me. I was listening to the readings and I heard you say alcohol is a drug. I thought, oh my God, alcohol is not a drug, it's a refreshment. I really thought you were totally misinformed. That, wait a minute, do you understand that I'm a dope shooter? Obviously you have me confused with someone else from another fellowship or something, because I don't have a problem with that. That's not my problem. Because I was very connected to the symptoms and wasn't aware of the disease. I had no idea, so I argued that was the first one. I couldn't get with the honesty that alcohol was a drug. The second one was, if you ain't praying, you ain't staying. Now, my biggest fear was being an addict was not a good thing for me. But don't get me hooked up in one of those cult things, because all I could think of is, oh my God, they're going to have me chanting steps on the street corner downtown, handing out IPs, like I'm going to be in Sheets or something with tambourines. Please, I'd rather be what I am than be, I ain't going out like that. I don't want to go out like that. I'd rather go out like, in a gunfight at the OK Corral than, did you hear she turned into one of them people that was chanting steps on the street corner? And I had a really hard time with it. I could not get with it all, and I said, no, I wasn't open to the God concept at all. I was totally closed about it. So I lacked open-mindedness in that part. And then here comes the third one, and this was like a home run hit right here. Don't get into a relationship for a year. I just finished doing 4 years in the penitentiary with all women. There's some exception to these rules, right? And then I even went to the text on you on some of these things because I really thought you were making stuff up along the way just to trick me. And I used to tell people that I really believed that the people that were saying don't get into a relationship for a year were the people that weren't in a relationship, because they couldn't get in a relationship because nobody wanted them, and that's why they said that stuff, because they were miserable and they wanted me to be miserable too. And I'm saying I had no willingness whatsoever to follow that. And I do believe, just like it says in the first step, that if reservations will rob us of the benefits this program has to offer. And I'm not saying that any one specific thing caused me to pick up. I'm saying collectively there was enough of my indifference and intolerance that I couldn't stay clean. And then I don't know how many reservations anybody can have before they pick up. I know that it's in my best interest to resolve any reservations as quickly as possible, because I can't afford the luxury of setting myself up. So what happened was I used. And I made it back here in 1988 totally broken. Crawled into these rooms. I mean, crawling would probably be an upgrade. I slithered into these rooms by then. I was totally bandaged from head to toe. I had abscesses all over me. I was in violation of federal parole. I had 2 more cases pending. I lost custody of my daughter. I was living like an animal. And I was introduced to the first step. And I share a lot about the steps and the traditions. And I share about the steps and about learning to finally live within my own skin. That finally, as a result of Narcotics Anonymous, I have found a home within me. That I had the most difficult time my whole life living within myself. That I believe that I searched always outside of myself for people, places, and things to offer me some sort of security, because within me I could find none. That it was too lonely in here, that it was too scary in here, that it just hurt too much in here, and I did everything I could to try to escape the pain. And when I came to Narcotics Anonymous, I was introduced to a way to heal the pain. And I came in here with my first step, and I'm going to take you on a journey inside myself. I live inside myself, and it's a home within me. And I'm going to take you into my house and tell you how the steps have worked for me and what's happened to me as a result. The first step, I'm going to take you down into the basement. I'm going to take you down into the basement of my soul, because that's where I finally ended. The first step, broken, lost, desperate, and alone. No hope. I'm in the dark, in the basement. I have been living here for so long. I have been backed into a corner in the dark. I don't even know any other way to live anymore. I don't even come out in the light anymore. I don't want anyone to see me, and I don't really want to see anybody. And I remember I had to go to my PO because I caught another case. And my PO said to me, Kath, you have two choices. He said, you either go to treatment or you go back to the penitentiary. And I contemplated. And I asked one very simple question. How long do I have to go back to the penitentiary? And what I'm trying to get you in touch with is my desperation, my total helplessness and hopelessness, my belief that I had become this and there was no way out, that there was no sense in going to treatment because treatment wasn't going to work, that I was going to end up in the penitentiary anyway, that you don't get time served for treatment, so you might as well just go do the time and get it over with, because this is the way it's going to be. And I'm talking about being in the basement in the dark, so lost and so alone with no hope. And finally, the honesty that comes with that first step. I'm talking about surrendering and saying, look, as a result of the way I've been living, look what I've become. I've become an animal. It didn't start out like this. I didn't even mean for this to happen. I really didn't expect it to get this bad. That I didn't know anything about progression. I didn't know that I had a disease that was obsessive and compulsive. I didn't know about the self-centeredness and the self-destruction. I didn't understand it. All I knew is I was in the grip of something very powerful that was burying me alive. And admitting to myself that, God, look, I can't live like this anymore. I can't do this anymore. I've really, truly had enough. And then I come to the second step, and in the basement, some little glimmers of light start to happen. It's almost magical. It's almost mystical what happens when we enter these rooms in Narcotics Anonymous and start to hear some hope. Because that's the hit. I started hearing some hope. My mind opened to possibilities beyond my wildest dreams. I came into these rooms, and it was really funny because I came into these rooms, and people would say, don't use, get a home group, get a sponsor, go to meetings, get phone numbers. And I would listen to people say this again and again, and finally I said, hey, look. Now, I understand don't use, go to a meeting, get a sponsor, get a home group and all that stuff, but I got really big problems. So what do you have for the big problem people? I could relate to this, for the reefer smokers maybe, or the pill poppers or something, but I mean the big problem, give me the big problem stuff right away. And you would laugh and say, don't use and go to a meeting, get a sponsor and get a home group and get phone numbers and call people and blah, blah, blah. And look, my skills had been reduced. My social skills were so reduced that I no longer couldn't communicate. I couldn't put a sentence together. My communication skills were based on who's got it, what's to it, where they at. And that usually went in one sentence. It just they flowed in one sentence. And it had gotten so bad that it reached a point where it was just like this. And you would know when I did this, you'd say, yes or no, or you'd go like this, and we would all talk like this. There was no communication. It was like nods and gestures and stuff like that, So when you said get phone numbers and call people, I was like, what do you say when you call these people? When I call, they answer the phone, and I'm like, and I wouldn't know what to say, so a friend and I decided to get together this little thing where we would call people on the phone, and I would say to you when you answered the phone, hi, because I thought to myself, if I call these people up and say, hi, I'm Kathy, and I met you at the meeting Saturday night and got your phone number, do you remember me? And you would say no, and I would die on the other end of the phone, because I couldn't handle any rejection at that time. If you didn't remember me, I think I would have just died. So I would call people up on the phone and I would say to them, "Hi, I'm Kathy. I got your number Saturday night. My sponsor said that I'm supposed to call 3 people in recovery every day. Do you qualify?" And usually the person on the other end of the phone would start to laugh. And then they would think, "Do I qualify?" And they would respond usually. And most of the time they'd say, "Yeah, I qualify." And I would say, "Well, could you state your qualifications?" And what happened was they would start sharing with me. They would tell me that they understood that they were in recovery because they did certain things, because they didn't use, because they went to a meeting, because they called their sponsor, because, they had a home group, that they did service work, that they didn't hurt anybody today. And I started to understand what recovery was. I started to appreciate that there were some basic things that needed to be done here, and if I did these basic things, I could get some light in the basement. That there was some hope, that maybe if I could get these things together, I could possibly get some other things together too. And you believed it. There was a lot of days I didn't believe it, but you believed it, and you kept smiling and said, "Keep coming back," and I started to believe. Coming to believe was a process that you invested in me. It wasn't something that was just because I had no understanding of God. I didn't even yet have a desire to have a God. All I knew was that you were just like me and you were doing this, and if you could do this, just maybe I could do this too, because I had the desire. And what happened was, I remember hearing people say, "Just for today, just do it, just for today. It's just about just for today." And I would say, "Look, just for today is really cool, but what do you do at night?" What happens at night? At night when it's really quiet and there's like nobody. I'm not calling somebody 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm having a hard enough time within the day. I'm not calling somebody 3 o'clock. So what do you do at night? And I remember writing a poem that used to help me make it through the night. And I would say it to myself over and over and over again to help me go to sleep. And it was, "Just for tonight, I'll be all right. In the quiet dark of the evening, my thoughts will not deceive me. I have faith in God above. I believe He's full of love. I have a ship to weather the storm. With help from all, I will transform. So hold on tight and don't lose sight. And just for tonight, I'll be all right." And I would say it over and over and over and over again. And I started to come to, and I started to come to believe, and I really did start to understand that if I don't always do what I always did, I won't always get what I always got. I started to understand, look, everything was such a mess. The past was running up on me, and my future looked very bleak. And this whole concept of like, be clean today and the right things will happen, didn't look real promising to me, because it looked like I was going to the penitentiary. You know what I mean? This did not look good. And I used to have people share, "Well, look, Kath, if you do the right thing today, eventually this day will catch up with you too. And that stuff will be behind." And I started to believe in this stuff. And then comes the third step, and I'm talking about now there's some light in the basement to come up out of the basement. We don't need to live like this anymore. We don't have to live in the basement anymore. And taking the necessary steps to come up out of the basement. No relationship with God. My understanding of God came from the rooms of Narcotics Anonymous. I still don't indulge in any religion. The God of my understanding is strictly spiritual, based on the fellowship of Narcotics Anonymous, what was introduced to me. I would hear different people share. I'm talking really fast. You know how I know I can't breathe? I get excited, huh? Woo! The Japanese woman hates me. Hi! Okay, So the relationship I got with God came from you. You would say, you know, God isn't going to give you more than you can handle, and I take a step. God didn't bring you this far to let you down, and I take a step. God does for you what you can't do for yourself, and I take a step. God's good all the time. I take a step. Every time you introduced something to me that I could grasp onto, I took another step up out of the basement. Here's a really perfect example. My husband and I are okay, wait a minute. My twins' father, husband of mine, because let's not confuse it with any of the first, second, or fourth husband. Relationships can be a terribly painful area, you know. Okay, so my husband and I are reconciling. But I don't know if anyone's ever heard me share, but this is the one where I had my children and he relapsed and could never get clean. He chose to cop, I chose to cope, you know. And he could never get clean, and as a result, he wound up in the penitentiary, and he's recently come home. So we're making an attempt to reconcile. No, he doesn't have the most positive attitude. And as a result, partially, I've changed a lot since we've been together. You know, so I'm not the same person that he knew before. Now, I'm going to try to set the stage for this so you understand a little bit better what it's like having me and him in a household together. My husband is somewhat chauvinistic. Somewhat. I am somewhat a feminist. So now you can consider putting these two personalities together in one space and know what the outcome of that would be alone. So my husband, and hold on to me here because this is the third step hit, okay? My husband says to me, I'm talking about I've made a decision now to reconcile. I made a decision implies action, it says, right? It's talking about making a commitment, okay? So my husband says to me, he wants me to do something and I won't do it, right? He says to me, Kathy, do you know that you were created? Yeah, that's where he's going. You were created to be subservient. Now that doesn't set well with me. There's something happening inside of me when he says this, right? There's something happening inside of me that's coming up out of me that I know is getting ready to come right here. It's coming out. And I don't seem to have a grip on it. It has a grip on me, right? Now, like I'm talking about, I made a decision. First, tradition. It works how and why. Because, look, the traditions, it said it'll help us to avoid the internal and external forces which may destroy us. It says practice these principles and we can avoid some of the pitfalls. I am ready to experience a pitfall. Do you hear what I'm saying? The first tradition says, now the first tradition talks about a common welfare and a unity that a personal recovery depends on this, right? I made this decision, so it's coming up. It's coming up on. I'm going to tell you what it's coming up. And I say to myself, okay, Kathy, the first tradition says that there's one question to ask yourself before you make. It says the action we're contemplating, right? That we need to ask ourselves one question. What I'm about to do, will it divide us or will it bring us closer together? Because my decision is to reconcile and come closer together. So now I got to ask myself this question. What you're about to say, Kath, will it divide you or will it bring you closer together? Well, I don't really know for sure. I've heard subservient, but I'm not absolutely sure what it means, right? So I tell him, wait a minute. I go look this shit up, right? Because I know I don't like the way it feels. It doesn't sound good to me, but maybe I'm wrong. So, and it says dutiful and obedient. I wasn't wrong. So, I'm ready to say, I'm ready to say, fuck you. I'm not created to be subservient, right? My husband is 10 years younger than me. So there's another part of me that's coming up that's saying, oh, little boy, you don't know what you're doing here. I'm telling you, there's defects just flying inside of me. They want out. it's like Pandora's box. Once I open it, they're all coming, right? So it's right here. But look, I say to myself, what you're about to do, will it divide you or will it bring you closer together? Look, I guarantee you I'm no genius, but fuck you will separate us. I'm sure of that. I'm absolutely sure of that. So I gotta focus on a principle. Well, dig this. I focus on the principle of anonymity. I focus on Kath, don't pay attention to the messenger, pay attention to the message. Kath, what's the message? Do you know, third step, do you know that you were created to be subservient? Yes, I know I was created to be subservient. So I respond against my better judgment. Yes. He says to me, do you know that everything would be all right if you just listened? Do I know that everything would be all right if I just listened? Yes. Yes. So I respond, yes. It's killing me. There's a part of me inside of me says you're setting yourself up to be a slave. He's going to hold you accountable. You know what I mean? You're going to be held accountable for this every time he has a request. Don't say it. Don't say it. But I say, yes. He says to me, so why don't you listen? And I say, because sometimes it's just really hard. And he smiles and he says to me, but do you want to listen? And I smile back and say, yeah. Because look, yeah, I really do want to listen. Third step, do you want to have a relationship with God? Do you know you were created to be subservient? Yes, I have the desire. Yes. It says, if we make a decision is an action. It says to do what? To turn my will. My will is my choice. My life is how I live it, over to the care of God. I'm now making a decision to make my actions, my choices of how I live, over to the care of God. Why? To build this relationship that I have longed for. To build this, to fill the void within me. To help me finally feel some peace and comfort within. To get rid of the loneliness, the isolation, the desperation. This is a 12-step program, not a 3-step program. So if I make the decision, then what? I'm going to take the steps up out of the basement, and I'm going to hit the door, and I'm going to do 4. I'm going to open the door. Third step says, all that's required of this step is that we open the door to a power greater than ourselves. All that is essential is willingness. That's all we need is some willingness to just, so I open the door and here's 4, and the house is very dark. There's no light that's been shining in this house. We have not dwelled above ground for many years. We're entering a home that probably could have been condemned. It is very scary to do this, but we're going to be searching and fearless. All we have to work with is a pen light. A little small pen light. We couldn't handle anything bigger than a pen light. Expose me to that 4-step stuff with a spotlight, I would have ran. Just a small pen light. Why? Because it's through the pen that we see the light. And here's what, we got a right to be right. We have got to write to get right. I used to hear a guy say that the 4-step is like a roller coaster ride, and it is. I'm not going to lie to anybody. It is. It's an emotional roller coaster ride, but it's the only way to get off the merry-go-round. I did a 4-step because I was tired of ending up in the same place, year after year after year, saying, I'm not here again. The people would change, the faces would change, some of the places would change, even things would change, but the feelings would always end the same way. Here I am. I couldn't take the pain anymore. So I'm searching through the house. What do I find? 4th step says that we're searching through the confusion and the contradiction in our lives. Well, what confusion, what contradiction in our lives? Here's, just for today. It says, and I thought this was just wonderful. It says, using addicts are a confused and confusing bunch of people. It's hard to tell from one minute to the next what they are going to do and who they are going to be. Check this out. Usually, the addict is just as surprised as anyone else is. And I could relate to that so well. I was turning into people I couldn't even identify. Like, where'd that come from? And what happened was I did a 4-step because I felt like I was losing me in the mix. I did not start out being the way I ended up. That I remember being a little girl and I had some things that I believed in life. That I had some dreams, that I had some values, and I slowly sold them for a hit. A hit of this, a hit of that, a hit of this. One of those things where I swore I would never get this bad and I'd cross that line. And I swear I'll never shoot dope and cross that line. I swear that I'll never turn a trick and cross that line. I swear if I ever get arrested, I'll stop. Now I've done 4 years in the penitentiary. I cannot stop. I lost every moral and every value. I'm searching through the house. I'm looking for them again. I know they're in there. I remember being a little girl and my mother came down from the holidays and she said to me, see, my mother was raised in a family that her father drank his drug. So there wasn't a whole lot of affection or attention. My mother says the only time she remembers her mother even holding her was whenever she was sick. And she would rock her in the rocking chair. But other than that, there was no like hugging or touching or kissing or any of that stuff going on. And my mother, so she's not a huggy, touchy, kissy person, right? My little girl is very affectionate. She jumps up on my mother's lap, and my mother says, you're just like your little girl. Just whenever you were little, she's the same way. And I thought, oh, that's nice. She said she wants to hug and kiss and blah, blah, blah all the time. And I'm standing there smiling, and, and then she turns to me and she says, yep, I thought you were going to suck me dry. It seemed like no matter how much kissing and loving I gave you, you said it was never enough. You always felt so alone and that nobody cared about you. And I did. At a very young age, I felt like that. At a very young age, I always looked for one person to fulfill all my needs. It was very confusing to me. I would search again and again for just one person to fulfill all the needs I had, emotionally, physically, mentally, whatever. Well, hey, and I was subject to mood swings at any given moment. And you had better, when I was younger, at least I would ask you, but as I started to get older, I wouldn't even ask. You were supposed to have ESP and just know these things. It was nothing like you better know these things, right? And as I got to be a teenager, what happened, and these are people that are in the house, as I got to be a teenager, I longed for affection and attention so desperately that I found it in men. And what I did was I started to settle for sex to get affection and to get attention. Just to have somebody to touch me and hold me and kiss me. It didn't even matter. I would give sex so that I could get that. And I would always wonder why I would wake up feeling so empty and so lost and so alone, because it never fulfilled the needs that I had. By the time I was an adult, anything that I had ever learned, my mother and father are factory blue-collar workers, but they're good, hard-working people. They taught me to work. I somehow or another thought that I could just ride on their coat and I didn't have to work because they worked, and that I should reap the benefits of what they worked for. So what I was taught was to work hard, but I never worked a day in my life. I was in total contradiction of what I was taught. That I was getting involved in relationships where I was getting involved with men that didn't even have a relationship with their own children, but I was absolutely sure they were going to have a relationship with mine. Or men that they couldn't even support their own household, but I was sure they were going to support mine. By now, I'm reaching the end of it where I believe in the family and I believe in living together and being in partnership and everything, but now I'm residing with a guy named Dirty Rich. Total contradiction. Total and complete contradiction of the way I was living life and what I believed it was meant to be. And the progression robbed me of all of it. And I'm going back and I'm searching and I'm finding these things in the house. I'm finding the little girl and the teenager and the woman. And I'm finding them in places. I find little girl hiding in the closet. The teenager's backed up against the wall, and she's very angry and very confused. And the woman's in the bathroom, all bloody and a mess, dying, trying desperately to get it in here. They're all in there. And here comes the fifth step, and the fifth step I call the fuse box step because all the lights come on. And what looks so scary in the dark looks so small in the light. It's like, our secrets grow in the dark and they die in the light of exposure. It's like coming down an alley, a dark alley, and there's a street light on a mouse, and the mouse looks this big on the wall. But whenever all the lights come on, it's just this big. And what I found a lot out in the fifth step was that as a result, the exact nature of the things that I do is a direct result of me looking for security in things that were only meant to offer me temporary comfort. That I get excessively involved in things that feel good at first, and I drive them to the ground in an attempt to find some security there. And I'm learning much better how not to do that as a result of those steps. And here comes the sixth step, and now that the lights are on, this place is a disaster. It's a mess in there. It's going to require some thorough look. You might have to sit down for a minute and get entirely ready to clean this house. It's funny because my son, since my husband came home, he told my son that you used to get money to go to the club and stuff like that. He says, now you're going to have to do chores to get your money. And my son's very timid, so he's not going to, question his father. When his father gets out of the car, he says to me, Mom, what's he mean, chores? And I said to him, well, like things you already do, like you make the bed and you put your toys away and you put your clothes up and blah, blah, blah. Just the same things you already do, but I'm going to give you some money for the chores. He says, Mom, I got school, I got homework, I got soccer, I got baseball. What's he mean, chores, Mom? And I started to laugh, and I said to him, no, honey. I says, it's like this. When you're 6 years old, you're going to learn how to do 6-year-old things. And then when you get to be 8 years old, you'll learn how to do 8-year-old things. And then by the time you're a man, you'll know how to do grown-up things so that when you have your family, you'll be able to be responsible for your family. And he looked and he smiled and he says, I can do chores. And it was kind of like the same way I was when I hit the sixth step, because it's like, what do you mean? Get a home group, I'm doing home group, sponsor, phone numbers, don't use, go to meet. What do you mean chores? But that's what it is, it's chores. Sixth step, what's in the house? There's things in the house like pride. Pride's up against the wall with its arms crossed like this and face up in the air. Sometimes it even shakes its hips. But it stands there like this, right? Pride, and you see, everything that is in me that's defective, Narcotics Anonymous has given me a tool to counteract it. This is a program of defense, not offense. I don't have to fight anymore. All I have to do is protect myself from a destructive power. So that whenever pride comes at me, all I have to do is tell it, you can't save your face and your ass at the same time. It's mine, mine, mine. It doesn't want anybody to know what I have, because it's mine, right? I just went through this with my husband about some money, because I got an income tax check back, and he's like, well, what about, that's mine. What are you talking about? But greed tries to hide things, and you told me, tell greed that you can only keep what you have by giving it away. That gluttony runs through the house looking for more, more, more all the time. And it doesn't care what more of anything, it doesn't matter. More food, more money, more sex, more whatever, And I was told to say to greed that one is too many, gluttony, one is too many and 1,000's never enough. For every defect, there's a slogan that will stop the defect, because we need something quick. You got to have, because obsession and compulsion doesn't play. It doesn't, and I'll tell you nothing, they'll gang bang you. Like they work the perfect team. They know if one comes up on me and it knows I'm aware of one, it'll back up and say, check, she's on to me. And then anger will say, let me try. So it's like there's a whole, it's why we got, God help me, because this is not something I can do alone. And the sixth step was about awareness and me going through the house and seeing these things that were garbage, things that needed to be put in the bag. God will remove the bag if I'm willing to put the garbage in the bag. Well, if we don't put the garbage in the bag, garbage will put us in the bag.
Right.
So I'm in this relationship. About 5 years clean. I hadn't been in a relationship for a while. I was in so much pain. I stayed out of one for a while. I got into this relationship with this guy who swore that, I told him what I was about, monogamy and blah, blah, blah. And he said he could do that and he would work that. And about 6 months into the relationship, I found out that he was having affairs with like 3 or 4 other women in the fellowship. And they were very kind to come and tell me personally, usually during meetings, that this was going on. And every time I would confront him about it, he would say it had been, but he would change. It would be different next time. He was going to get with the program, blah, blah, blah. And after 6 months into it, I realized that this was not working. But for 6 additional months, I stayed in it. That it was not as easy to get out of it as it was to get in it for me. I wanted to believe that he would change, although all the evidence was contrary to that belief. And this is really true, to pay attention to the evidence. It's why it's so important to live right here, right now, and pay attention to the evidence. It talks about the defects of character, and, I didn't really know a whole lot about what character was, but its character is based on our principles, values, and morals, our own personal principles, values, and morals, and how we live by them. And if we live with them, we are of good character. Defect, however, is, check it out, if a car gets recalled because it's defective, it's recalled because it's missing something to make it complete. There's something that's missing within it, so it's not complete. Defect is like whenever someone's in the military and they defect, that they abandon the mission, they desert the cause. So that if character is based on principles, and principles are truly about me living in good health and spirit. Principles definition says a guiding sense of obligation to live in good health and spirit. Do you hear what I'm saying? Character is based on my guiding sense of obligation to live in good health and spirit. If I defect, that's what I'm abandoning, that mission, to not live in good health and spirit. That I am defecting from the mission of becoming complete, of being whole, of the body, mind, and spirit coming together to live in good health and spirit. So that every time I do that, I'm abandoning self. Every time I defect character, I'm abandoning self. I wasn't aware of that stuff. So here I am 6 months later, still in the relationship, and finally find myself in so much pain because I've fractured my own personality that I can't stay in it anymore. And I get out. He calls me about a year later, and I would like to say jokingly makes a suggestion that we should try this relationship again. I know it had better been a joke. And I said to him, look, we weren't in any kind of relationship. The best relating we were doing was on an animal level. Because that's how we were relating. We were relating on an animal level. And if there was any ship going on, it was sinking very fast. And for real, all I really was to you was a late night snack. And I was a late night snack because the 6th step says that the principle of willingness is vital to this step. And I was a late night snack because I didn't have the willingness to build enough character to be a main course. And that's why I settled for less for so long. And then here comes the 7th step, and what happened is that now I put the garbage in the bag. There's occasions where I say, God, could you hold up? I think I threw away something I really need. And I become a garbage picker. I start sorting through the garbage, trying to clean up garbage to make it work again. And when I go through it, I try to wipe it off and put it back up so that I can make this work in my life again. Because I don't want to let go. And what happened in the relationship was, and I'm talking about the humility that goes with the 7th step. I was in so much pain that I finally got on my knees and I said, God, please help me to take care of myself. Help me, God, not to focus on what he's doing and what's happening with him, but help me just to do right by me and do what's best for me. Because I was caught in the obsession and compulsion of what he needed to do to make the relationship work. And what happened was, a week later, I was diagnosed with hepatitis C. And I remember, boy, did the focus switch with the quickness. No longer was I concerned about what he was doing or who he was with, because my life was now on the line. So all that stuff was totally irrelevant now. All that was important was my health and well-being and what I could do to get myself in order. And I remember kneeling down after I got the diagnosis, and I was crying because I was really fearing that I was going to die. And I started to laugh in the middle of it and said, God, I know I prayed for focus and for me to take care of myself, but do I have to be that specific, God? And I started to laugh, and I started to realize that, look, if I just take care of me, I'm going to be okay. And what happened was, as a result of me focusing on me, I started to do right by myself. And I remember finally reaching the point where I understood what was going on with the relationship. I'm talking about, I held on to this relationship so hard that my nails were going into my palm. I held on so hard that blood was coming from my nails because I was holding on so hard. And the whole time I'm saying, God, could you take this? It's so painful. God, it hurts so much. I can't take it anymore. God, would you please take it from me? And God is saying very clearly, based on the evidence that I'm receiving, let it go. And finally, I open up my hand because I'm in so much pain that I open up my hand, and it appears to me that I was holding on to nothing the whole time. And there's so much humility that goes with coming to terms with that I was holding on to nothing the whole time. I was holding on to a fantasy, that I wasn't living in reality, that I wasn't paying attention to the evidence, that once again I sold myself short and I settled for less. And that I started to focus on me and taking care of me, have had no problems with hepatitis C since then, no enzyme count problems, going to the doctor left and right for all these tests. All the tests are coming back that everything's fine, but yet I'm very fatigued. I'm waking up in the morning, I'm very tired all the time, right? This is right before I get the diagnosis. I'm very tired all the time. I'm going to work. I can't even function during the day. Leaning up against the wall, I say to another coworker of mine, here I am, almost 6 years clean, and I'm losing the will to live. Do you hear what I'm saying? I'm losing. Look, I get diagnosed depressed. I was told that I needed medication, that I needed to take antidepressants because I suffered from symptoms of depression. I am not talking about anybody that's taking medication. Let's make this perfectly clear. I'm talking about me. I'm not talking about you. I get diagnosed depressed and I'm told to take antidepressants. And what I started to do was I let go of the relationship. I started to take care of myself. And what happened was the symptoms ceased. And what I came to terms with is that if I don't live within my own principles and my own morals, that one of the side effects is depression. And that before I make a decision to take medication for symptoms that are similar to it, I better really check myself and see how I'm living. That I better look at all the areas of my life and see if I'm in conflict with any of my own principles before I make a decision to take medication because someone says I should because I have certain symptoms. Because there's a lot of times people told me I had symptoms to plenty of other things that was really just a direct result of my own addiction. And I'm learning much better that if I practice these principles, I can be reasonably happy. that I can really live happy, joyous, and free if I take care of myself. And so as a result, the garbage is removed from the house. And here we are on 8. And what I'm finding out in 8 is that I live home alone. That now the house is clean, but nobody else comes in there. I don't let anyone in, and I'm here by myself. The doors are always locked. The windows are shut tight. I don't answer the phone. I don't even check the mail. You never know who might send you a letter or a bill. And what happens in 8 is I start to make a list, because what happens is I don't want to live home alone. My spirit has been set free from the garbage, but it keeps bumping into people. And I'm trying to let my spirit be free. And what happens is I want to invite the people into my life that were harmed by my addiction, and I want to make wrong right. I want to set things straight. So I start to make the list of the people I want to invite. And that's all I'm doing in 8 is making a list. Who do you want here? Who have you harmed? What has happened? Whether they left to save themselves or I put them out or whatever the case was. I'm putting them on the list because harm was done. And what happens in 9 is I start to make these amends. I do whatever I have to do to make it right. If I make a phone call, if I send a letter, if I send them money, if I see them in person, whatever I have to do, I do it to make it right, because I'm tired of living in a home with guilt and shame and not being able to look myself in the mirror still. And what happened was my mother was on my list. I grew up most of my life resenting my mother and hating my mother. I wouldn't even admit it, because I thought there was something terribly wrong for a child to have to hate her mother. My mother worked most of her life, and I was raised in a single-parent home, and she wasn't around much. And as a result, I felt abandoned, and I felt like she wasn't there to care for me. And I missed my mother a lot, and I resented the fact that I missed her and she wasn't there. And I grew to hate her. And anything she wanted of me, I would not do. And anything she desired for me, I went totally and completely against. And as a result, I grew to hate my mother. This past Valentine's Day, my mother used to say to me, and we would share about things that happened when I was a child. And I would tell her all the bad things that I could remember. And she would say, well, what about the good things? She had detailed things of good things that would happen, but I couldn't remember them. And I would think, she can't be making this stuff up. It must have happened. She has too many details of them. I had no recall at all. Everything I remembered was bad. It hurt. And I remember starting to talk to my mother about how she was raised and what happened to her. And I started to get an understanding of my mother. Like, and it talks about in the 9th step, and that we no longer seek understanding. To be understood, we're seeking understanding. I'm trying to understand that when we are more forgiving of others, we tend to be more forgiving of ourselves. I'm trying to get with the spiritual principle of forgiveness here. Because what I started to realize was, as I grew, that I became my mother. Because we are what we know, and I was taught by her. And the more that I grew and the more that I hated my mother, the more self-loathing came in me. And I started to understand that I cannot be self-accepting and self-loathing at the same time. That I cannot reside in that space with both. Because look, spiritual principles are never in conflict. There's no way possible for both of them to reside in the same space. So I knew that if I wanted to forgive myself for what I had become, that I better start to understand my mother. And I started to talk to her about how she was raised and what happened to her. I experienced empathy with my mother. I experienced I felt compassion for my mother and what a struggle she had raising me by herself. And over this Valentine's Day, I had to go out of town to a convention on Valentine's Day. And the day before, I was running around trying to get everything taken care of that needed to be done for the kids and all that stuff. And I took the time to run to the store and get a little hard candy. And I went up to the house and I knocked on the door. And she answered the door. And I said, Mom, I'm real busy and I'm not going to be in town, but I wanted to give you this candy for Valentine's Day. And she smiled and she said to me, oh, you didn't have to do that. And I said, yeah, I did. Because I want you to know that no matter who I'm with or where I'm at, you will always be my Valentine. And I start to make amends, and I start to make the wrong right, and I stop the hate, and I start to love. And what happens to me is I start to remember good things that happened. I start remembering my mother's ponytail bouncing down the street. I start remembering her trying to roller skate with me, and the first time I rode a bike, and how she always told me that I was beautiful and that I could do anything I wanted to do and I could be anybody I wanted to be. She gave me dreams and I threw them away. And that as a result, I do the same thing for my children. And that she does the same thing for my children. My little girl wants to be a teacher and my son wants to be a policeman. And that I tell them, you can be anything you want to be, and I got that from her. And I forgot all about that. But until I could move away the hate, I couldn't remember the love. And then comes 10, and 10 is a maintenance step. I heard the guy sharing last night. It's like having a house and keeping it clean. That's what it is. Now that all the garbage has been removed and we've cleaned up and we invite people in, we want to keep the house in order. I don't want the house to get like this again. So, there's sometimes where I slide things under the bed and I try to stick them in the closet because I'm lazy and I don't want to do it now. I'll do it later, and it builds up. And these character defects will back us into a corner where we can't get out of clean. That I have to be very careful. Pay attention to me. I am the person that needs watching most and more than anybody else. And I actually need a whole group of people like you to watch me. That's why I come to Narcotics Anonymous. It's not that I don't think that I couldn't not use a drug. It's because I'll sneak up on me if I don't. I know that. And so what happens is, here comes the 10th step, and oh yeah, right, now I make a commitment to be in a relationship, and the usual things happen. There's forces that are powerful above us and powerful below us. That life continues to go on regardless. And what happens is I get the call. This always happens. I make a commitment and I get the call. You know, the call from the ex-lover or the ex-boyfriend or the ex-whatever. It's a test. It's not a test from God. This is a test, though. And what happens is I pick up the phone and I hear the voice. Hi, I really miss you. I'd like to spend some time together. Why don't you let me come over? I'll buy a pizza. We'll watch some movies. I'm just looking for a little companionship, a little, blah, blah, blah. It's been a long time no see. And I say to him, look, you know as well as I do that if you come over here, we're not going to eat pizza. We're not going to watch movies. That it's going to be my body parts in your mouth and your body parts in my mouth, and it's going to end really ugly. Let's be honest. And I said to him, no, you know what? Look, take my own inventory. Look, you know what? You cannot come over. Why, Kath? I just want to watch a movie and have pizza. You can't come over because I am tired of looking for love and settling for sex. It's starting to really understand that a 10-step inventory is about me asking me some questions, not me asking him some questions. Like paying attention to what I'm eating. Am I eating something, or is something really eating me? Am I smoking something, or is something smoking me? Am I buying something, or is something really buying me? Am I betting on something, or is something really betting on me? Am I screwing someone, or is someone really screwing me? And start to ask myself honestly some questions and pay attention to what I'm doing and who I am. And am I living within my principles? Am I paying attention to my morals? And what happens is the serenity prayer of God, grant me the serenity to accept the things, the person I cannot change, the courage to change the person I can, and the wisdom to know that it's me, not anybody else, it's me. And as a result, here comes the 11th step, and in the 11th step, I find in the 11th step that the garbage that was taking up space was really God's place. That once the garbage is removed within me, I feel the presence of God. That there's direction in my life. That there's a light that shines within me. That I have direction today as a result of it. Look, there was so many changes going on in my life. And I was really struggling looking for some security. And I know I'm very vulnerable during that time. Because I'm real subject to use something when I'm that scared. And I go to work, and my work job changed, and my position changed. I didn't even have an office. My son was being diagnosed, for ADD. My oldest daughter was in the hospital having a really hard pregnancy problem, and my husband was fresh out of the penitentiary with a very narrow-minded perspective. So there was no area of my life that I could run to and get some sense of comfort or security. And I was really scared, and I was struggling because I've been in this relationship before, and it's caused me a lot of pain. I've had a lot of problems with him using and not staying clean and having to feel the pain that goes with someone I love watching them kill themselves and not being able to do anything and being left with 2 babies to take care of myself, and I'm not getting any younger. And what happened was I go to work, and I'm moving from the one office to the other, and I pick up a folder, and it says personal. And I'm struggling with, God, look, I really want to do the right thing, and God, I don't know if this is the best thing or not for me. All I know is I really would like this to work. I'd like to see it come together. God, just please let me not go into denial. Help me to pay attention to the evidence and make the best choices and the right decisions here. And I pick up the folder, and I open it up, and on the top of the paper on the folder it says, Dear God. And I think, maybe I should read this. And I sit down and I pull the paper out, and this is what it says. Because it was right where I was. You know when you have those moments where you know you're having a spiritual awakening, where right in the moment you get the hit, like there's clarity that comes to all the confusion, where it all comes together at one time and it all makes sense? This was it. I pull the paper out, and the paper says at the top, bold, Dear God. And I sit down and I look at it, and it says, Dear God, I have no idea where I am going. I do not see the road ahead of me. I cannot tell for certain where it'll end. And nor do I really know myself. And the fact that I think I'm following your will does not mean that I am actually doing so. But I believe this. I believe that the desire to please you does in fact please you. I hope I have that desire in everything I do. I hope I never persist in anything apart from that desire. And I know if I follow this road that I have no reason to be afraid. Because though I may be lost at times, I know. Look, I know. You hear what I'm saying? I know that you will never leave me to face my troubles all alone. And I knew at that moment, look, God, I'll do whatever you want me to do. God, I'll follow your will. I want to be of service. I want to follow your direction. I know that you know what's best for me, God, and I'll do whatever that is. But God, if you could fit this in here, I'd really, really appreciate it, God. And as a result, I feel the presence of God within me, and I have a relationship with God as a result of it. I remember watching a movie, and a guy said that a lot of times people think that hell is these burning pools of fire where you suffer eternally. He said, hell's not that. Hell is living life being separated from God. And as a result, I have a relationship with God, and that's what I share. The 12th step is open house. The 12th step is I invite you in. I share with you all my experiences. All my experiences are gifts from God. They're my purpose to be of service. I no longer ask myself, why are these things happening to me? I know why they're happening to me. They're happening to me to share with you, to let you know how I got through whatever it was. And you have a responsibility to me to share whatever it is that you go through, to let me know how you get through it, so that I know that when I come to that place, I can get through it too.
It's the whole purpose behind we can only keep what we have by giving it away. And in the 12th step it says this, and this is truly for the newcomer. Yes, we are a vision of hope. I loved your logo because it said this is exactly what I'm doing here. What I'm doing here is I'm keeping the vision alive. I'm sharing right here, right now, what's going on to keep the vision alive. What's the vision? Yes, we are a vision of hope. We are examples of the program working. The joy that we have in living clean is an attraction to the addict who still suffers. We do recover to live clean and happy lives. Look, welcome to Narcotics Anonymous. I want to close by sharing something that happened. My first World Convention I ever went to was in 1989. The theme of the convention was "The Magic is Real." It was it was drama, heavy drama. It was like, it's magic, it's real, yeah, go. And I went to a meeting, and the meeting was, I had like 9 months clean, and the meeting was on self-acceptance. I knew nothing about self-acceptance, and really I was desperate to know something about self-acceptance. And there was a guy that shared there a story about Narcotics Anonymous, and he says, look, Narcotics Anonymous is like the land over the rainbow. He says, and when you reach this land, you're told to follow the 12-step road. And when you get to the end of the road and you reach the castle of HP, you tell HP, look, all I want to do is get home. Please help me to get home. And HP says, click your heels 3 times. Honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness. And home is right in here. All the answers to all our problems are right in here. And the journey is through the 12 steps and traditions of Narcotics Anonymous. So anybody that's new here, please do 90 meetings in 90 days. And if that doesn't work, do 90 more. And if that doesn't work, do 90 more. Because I'm here to tell you that miracles happen in Narcotics Anonymous and dreams do come true. Thanks for letting me share.